The 1980s had to have been the peak of action movie cinema. Action movies had existed previously, but once the 80s hit, they exploded. You can probably attribute the rise of the genre to many things. Advances in technology, changes in our culture, cocaine, but in my opinion, the number one reason was the new breed of action heroes. The genre became dominated by big beefy boys who kicked ass, took names, and occasionally made attempts to act. Schwarzenegger, Stallone, Van Damme, these men were absolute legends and box office gold. Never one to ignore a good thing, movie studios all across Hollywood were quick to try and capitalize on the success by finding their own action star that would serve as their golden goose. People from all types of backgrounds got their shot. Primetime soap actor Lorenzo Lamas, professional wrestler Roddy Piper, kickboxer Don the Dragon Wilson, kickboxer Olivier Gruner, kickboxer Gary Daniels, and yet, even with all the great actors, wrestlers, and martial artists out there trying to become the next great action movie star, one man stood above the rest. A man who in 1991 was voted the action star of tomorrow by the National Association of Theater Owners, before his first movie had even come out. His name was Brian Bosworth, and today on Pop Culture Hyperfixations we're taking a look at his debut film, the masterpiece known as Stone Cold.
The Boz. He's an undercover cop with his own way of turning up the heat.
Just picked up the wrong passenger, buddy!
And when he decides to chill out, he's stone cold.
And then some.
Brian Bosworth. Stone Cold.
But before we delve into the gloriously violent piece of business that was Stone Cold, we need to talk about its star, Brian Bosworth, aka The Boz. Bosworth was a football player who first made his mark in college as a linebacker for the University of Oklahoma Sooners. He's a college football Hall of Famer who helped lead the Sooners to a 1985 national title. His accolades and accomplishments are too numerous to include in this video, but suffice to say Bosworth was a bad man. But for as great as a player as he was, and he was great, Bosworth's real notoriety came from his off-the-field antics. On the field, Bosworth was a force, but off the field, he was a menace. Bosworth loved the spotlight, and in his quest for attention, he created a persona known as the Boz, a cocky, loudmouthed, bleached blonde mulleted badass who talked trash to you in the press and then lay you out in the game. The people who loved him, and the people who hated him, and a lot of the people who loved him also ended up hating him later. After leaving college, the Boz was picked up by the Seattle Seahawks in the NFL's 1987 supplemental draft. He brought that large-than-life persona to the NFL, but the act wore thin. Injuries had taken away the athleticism that made the Boz great. In 1988, he suffered a shoulder injury that effectively ended his career. He came in the league hyped as the next great linebacker, but instead he would go down as an all-time bust. Depressed and alone, a 24-year-old Bosworth went to Hawaii to try to sort out his uncertain future. It was there he got a phone call from a very unlikely source.
This is your wake-up call, pal. Go to work.
That's right, it was Michael Douglas who called the Boz and asked him if he considered being in a movie. Bosworth was reluctant, but eventually convinced. One factor in Boz's decision to take part was his agent Gary Wichert. Wichert was a larger-than-life character that was the real-life inspiration behind Jerry Maguire. After meeting Bosworth and he was still with the Sooners, Wichert became a big part of crafting and marketing the Boz persona. He had long envisioned of an idea to transition a client from athlete to movie star, and he thought Boz was the guy to do it. Wichert had been shopping Bosworth all around Hollywood even before the injury, and even turned down small roles for him in movies like Tango and Cash. And now finally, here it was. But still, Bosworth wasn't so sure. I mean, yeah, he had agreed to Wichert's idea to eventually pivot to film after football was over, but he didn't think it'd be this soon. What finally pushed Boz to make the movie was the script. The film was called Heart of Stone, and told the tale of a cop forced to go undercover to take down the same biker gang that had killed his father when he was young, all while trying to keep his own family out of harm's way. Bosworth really liked the script because it wasn't just a big dumb action movie. It had a heart of stone. Michael Douglas's production company Stonebridge Entertainment was set to produce, and the casting process began. Bosworth would play the cop Joe Huff / John Stone, while Richard Gant and Sam McMurray would play his FBI handlers. To play the members of the outlaw biker gang, the Brotherhood, producers knew they needed not just great villains, but great actors, who could work with the novice Bosworth. To do so, they brought in a pair of all-time screen bad guys, Lance Henriksen as the leader Chains, and William Forsythe as his second-in-command, Ice. Rounding out the cast was Arabella Holzberg as Nancy. Chain's old lady begins to second-guess the life she's chosen, and think of a world outside the biker gang. Bruce Malmuth was tapped to direct the film, having previously directed Sylvester Stallone's Nighthawks and Steven Seagal's Hard to Kill. Malmuth was excited about the movie, and told the press he thought Bosworth as an actor would be a mix of Brando, James Dean, and Gary Cooper. The movie, which at this point had been renamed to The Brotherhood, began filming in Alabama on June 4th, 1990. The making of the movie was, if only there was some sort of visual representation of how the production went. That'll work. Yeah, the production started off as an absolute train wreck. The first couple weeks of shooting focused heavily on Jon Stone's family and building up the motivations behind the character. The problem was that the footage was unusable. I don't mean unusable like Bosworth was bad at acting unusable, but that the footage was so out of focus it was literally unusable. According to Bosworth, Malmuth had personal problems that had bled onto the set to the point that he was unable to properly do his job. Making matters worse was he had basically wasted a third of the movie's budget. Stonebridge Entertainment quickly fired Malmuth and frantically looked for someone who could write the ship. Possibly due to his familiarity with the crew already down there, Craig R. Baxley was brought in. Baxley was a former stunt coordinator who had transitioned to directing. He had recently made his first 2 feature films, Action Jackson and I Come in Peace, but he'd also directed his fair share of TV, including several episodes of The A-Team. By the time Baxley arrived, production had moved to Mississippi and he was in full problem-solving mode. The first problem was the script, which is kind of important. William Forsythe later called it the worst script ever written, and Henriksen also hated it. The script had Shane speak only in Bible scriptures, and Henriksen thought it, well, sucked. Baxley agreed with Henriksen. At that point, it was decided that dialogue would be thrown out of the window and it'd be up to the actors to sort through what they said in any given scene. All of Henriksen's dialogue in the movie is improvised, and I kinda want every line he says tattooed on my body Memento style.
If you wanna fuck with the living, you gotta learn to fuck with the dead.
Baxley was not one to turn down any idea he thought was good. When Henriksen pointed out the movie would be better with actual bikers, Baxley sent him out to recruit some for extras. Baxley had bigger fish to fry. According to Bosworth, when Baxley introduced himself to the cast, he told them, "You guys handle the script. I've been hired to blow shit up and kill some people." And that's exactly what he did. The film, which was renamed Stone Cold due to the insistence of Gary Wichard for some reason, is chock full of carnage. With so much of the budget already used up by Malmuth's failed run, Baxley was going to make sure the rest of the movie got as much bang for its buck as possible. Well, for people like Henriksen and Forsythe, the new changes led to a freedom that made production more fun. Not everyone felt the same way. Bosworth was disappointed with the new direction of the movie, as the decision was made to cut out anything he had filmed that portrayed him as a family man. Instead, he would be a loner with a giant lizard and a questionable taste in underwear. In this new version of the film, Joe Huff is a perpetually suspended renegade cop who had to be blackmailed by the FBI in order to go undercover inside a biker gang known as the Brotherhood. After infiltrating the gang as Jon Stone, he becomes a pet project of its leader Chains and a rival of the second in command, Ice. He also becomes entangled romantically with Chains' old lady Nancy, who has a moral foundation that clashes with her fellow gang members. While originally there to investigate their connection to drugs, Stone also learns of a massive plan by the Brotherhood to kill the district attorney who sent one of their own to prison for the victimless crime of killing a priest at a baptism. There's a ton more I'm leaving out because this movie moves at a breakneck pace. While overall that decision to move so fast works for the film, it does leave one character in the dust. Nancy had a lot more to do in the original version, and Arabella Holzberg was excited for the role. According to her, in the original Heart of Stone script, Nancy was supposed to turn on the Brotherhood, go legit, and literally and metaphorically be free of her chains. In the movie that actually got made, this is what happens. Yeah, I don't know if it's possible to get a 0 on the Bechdel test, but if it is, Stone Cold did. Nancy's death is forgotten within seconds, as who has time to mourn the one female character with agency? We got a third act to get to and a landmark to destroy. The making of the third act of Stone Cold could honestly be a documentary altogether, because it's wild. In the film, the Brotherhood launch an all-out assault on the state capitol, complete with motorcycles, machine guns, and a military helicopter. Believe it or not, that was the toned-down ending. The original script called for a massacre to take place during some sort of family picnic day on the Capitol lawn, but Baxley thought that might be a step too far. They just have to settle for murdering a bunch of people inside an actual government building. They actually received permission to film the climactic scenes at the Mississippi State Capitol building, but the deal fell through at the last minute. Politicians at the time claimed it was because they didn't want to destroy the sanctity of the building by removing some trees and windows, but what probably happened is someone finally read the script. Luckily, the Arkansas government had a lot less scruples about the whole project. Baxley remembered meeting with the governor of Arkansas who gave his permission and seemed excited about the movie. Gee, I wonder whatever happened to that guy.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America, William Jefferson Clinton.
Instrumental to the production was Arkansas Secretary of State Bill McCune, who took a hands-on approach to the production. Filming in Arkansas still had its difficulties, but McCune massaged the right egos to keep the film rolling and everyone happy. Now I'm sure this isn't related, but McCune was later sentenced to 17 years in prison for political corruption and bribery. Too much happens in that finale to fully break down, including Lance Henriksen mowing down the entire Mississippi State Supreme Court, and a motorcycle flying through a window and into a helicopter. Of course, Jon Stone succeeds in apprehending Chains, which is the only thing he succeeds in, because basically everyone else is dead. The only other people who survive are the FBI guys. Which is good, because Sam McMurray is there in the nick of time to save Stone from chains. And yes, before you ask, that is basically the same ending as Die Hard. When production wrapped, everyone had different feelings about what had been created. Lance Henriksen was quoted at the time as saying that Stone Cold was probably the best piece of work he'd ever done. Baxley was just excited he was able to pull the movie of a tailspin and get it made on budget. Bosworth publicly put on a brave face and promoted the movie, but privately the shooting had worn on him. Due to various delays, the film took twice as long to make as expected, and he was exhausted. During the course of production, he had gotten official word that the Seattle Seahawks had placed him on waivers, and with that, his NFL career was officially over. He found out the news the same night as the Viking funeral scene for Ice. God, this movie rules. And the emotions it dredged up caused him to almost quit the film. He was talked back into finishing the movie, but this isn't the type of film he signed up for. He knew it in his heart. Of Stone. Allegedly, some of the producers not named Michael Douglas even began funneling money from the Van Damme vehicle Double Impact to Stone Cold, thinking Stone Cold was going to be the surefire hit. They had put a lot into this movie, and it had better work.
This is either gonna be the biggest pork chop I ever ate, or my bulldozer.
The initial cut of the film was so violent that it was actually the first action film to receive the dreaded NC-17 rating. Cuts were made and the movie was rated R, but it's hard to imagine how much more violent it could have been. The movie was pushed hard, with a $10 million marketing campaign, but when it was released in the summer of 1991, it cratered. It made less than $3 million at the box office on its opening weekend, finishing in a disappointing 5th place. The critical reaction wasn't much better. A lot of people didn't like it, but probably the meanest review I found came from the Philadelphia Inquirer, who said, quote, "The one positive about Stone Cold is that the incredibly loud rock on the soundtrack occasionally drowns out the dialogue." The movie quickly disappeared from theaters before becoming popular in home video. It took time, but over the years an audience has found the movie has become an all-time B-movie classic. Its continued popularity has baffled some of the cast, with Forsythe and Bosworth both mentioning that they don't fully understand why it's the movie people love to talk to them about so much. Henriksen is the one who seems to be the most proud of the movie, probably because he got to say stuff like this.
You know, at a moment like this, I think of my father's last words, which were, "Don't, son, that gun is loaded."
For my money, it's one of the funnest action movies of all time, and I don't think it's particularly close. It's a movie that knows what it is, and Craig Baxley delivered on the promise he made to blow some up and kill some people. What more could you ask for? As for its star, Brian Bosworth, he did find peace in his life after football, after he settled down and began raising his family. He still takes the occasional acting role, but nothing near the level of insanity that was Stone Cold. Ironically, I think his movie career was much like his pro football career. He entered with a lot of hype and promise, but was never able to fully reach the potential others thought he had. Still, we all saw the flashes that showed he could have been an all-time great. Brian Bosworth is many things to many people, but to me, he will always be Stone Cold. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, please hit the like button, and if you want to see more, do me a favor and subscribe. And let me know in the comments why Stone Cold is the greatest action movie of all time. Because it is, I'm not going to argue about this.